Welcome back, bookish people. It is your host, Liz, and this is eReads Podcast, the place where I discuss authorship, books, and all things creativity. Today, I have Stacy here to teach us all about the world of editing. Stacy, the founder of Shortcuts for Writers, helps fiction and creative nonfiction writers of all levels who want to simplify the writing and editing process so they can save time and money. She published her first novel at age 18 and over the years has written sweet and sassy chick lit novels, mysteries, and determined women sleuths, and entertaining books for young adults and children. Her novels have been ranked as number 5 and number 11 in the Nook store and number 30 on the Amazon Kindle paid list. Stacy is also a freelance developmental editor and line editor, a creator of online courses for writers, and an award-winning journalist who has published more than 3,000 articles. Stop by her website to check out free resources like her 5-day line editing class and the Looks and Gazes Quick Start Guide. Now, here is a quick ad before we hear more about Stacy and the world of editing. Hey puzzle people, I am here to tell you about Wongo puzzles. They are 100% wooden puzzles. They'll last forever. Each piece is hand-drawn, so no two pieces are the same, and you'll discover some fun, whimsy pieces as you work through it. They come in a custom wooden box that is perfect for storage and gifting. Some of the designs include animals, some that look like abstract art, buildings, nature. They have whatever you are into, so definitely check them out. With stunning designs and unique shapes, Wongo puzzles are a cut above the rest. I loved doing the snow globe puzzle myself. It was great to pull out a puzzle and be done in a night and not have it on the table for a week. So what are you waiting for? Go to wongopuzzles.com and pick your puzzle today. And be sure to use the promo code ereadspod10 to get 10% off your order. This is the most fun you've had with a puzzle guaranteed or your money back. Go to wongopuzzles.com and use the code ereadspod10, that's ereadspod10, to get 10% off your order and get puzzling right now. So welcome, Stacy, to the podcast. I am really excited to have you for many reasons. One, I just think it's amazing, all the different things that you offer on your website. And, you are the founder of Shortcuts for Writers. But selfishly, I am scared of the editing process. So I'm hoping to talk with you and to dispel a lot of those fears. So welcome.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
So glad. And so to welcome people, I like to ask them kind of like a bookish question. So as both someone who writes books, who edits books, my question for you is, where is your favorite place to write and or edit? Whether it's the same place, a different place, do you have a favorite place to be when you're working?
Well, now I mostly write and edit at my desk just because I get neck and back soreness. And my chiropractor told me, Stacy, you have to get a special chair with like a
Ooh, it goes all the way up. I like that.
For your neck, yes. But my favorite place before that was my recliner on my Chromebook. So I find that, and I love to read there. So it's just very relaxing to be there. And I will do some light editing work or writing work in there, but if anything, where I'm going to be at the computer for a while, I've been instructed that I have to come to my desk now.
You know what, I think sometimes we can discredit the perfect chair, but the perfect chair, you can be there for hours, right? Like the perfect position, it will just really add to the experience. So whether you're working or reading, so I definitely agree with that.
And I also like reading on the beach, because I'm not much when we go to the beach in the summer. I'm not really one for, I don't know, the water has to be really warm for me to be going in the
Yes.
water, so I've been known to, read or bring like a notebook and make some notes. So that's nice, like being outside, like on a nice day,
Oh, yeah.
especially near the ocean.
I love that. Absolutely. You have the nice sounds of the ocean. And yeah, if it's warm out, you got the sun. Oh, yeah. Definitely cannot wait for us to get a couple more months later into the year
Yes.
to go back to the beach. So, Stacy, please tell the listeners a little bit more about Shortcuts for Writers. So, we heard a little bit of it in your bio that I read on the earlier part of the episode, but can you tell us, how did you start this?
Well, I started out editing several years ago, and I'm an author myself, so what you were saying about being afraid of the editing process, yeah, I mean, I used to I used to be overwhelmed by the editing process also when I was starting out, and I just learned it over the years through lots
Right,
of trial
right.
and error and getting letters back from editors, and it's kind of like a roller coaster. And just kind of
Yes.
learning, and an agent would say, "Oh, you should go. We like it, but you should go do this." And an editor from a publishing company, they would reject the manuscript, but we think it would be better if you did this. So I just really learned in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
So Shortcuts for Writers, I named it my company that just because it's not really, there's not like a shortcut. I wish there was. I wish there was some magical shortcut, but um, I the way I learned it was just years of ups and downs and getting letters and
Mm-hmm.
so you can learn from my shortcuts where I can just tell you tell you everything I've learned over the years. And I also learned a lot from being an editor and seeing that I wasn't so unique. All these other writers were having the same issues I
Right.
once had when I was starting out, and they're the same issues. I was just seeing the same patterns creep up again and again in manuscript after manuscript. So that's when I expanded into not only offering developmental and line editing services, but also offering online courses for writers. And
Nice.
it sparked my first course, my signature course, Book Editing Blueprint.
Yeah.
Um, just because the editing process, it's expensive.
Oh my gosh.
It
Yes.
really it is. And a lot of, especially beginner writers who haven't worked with an editor before, they just underestimate how expensive it's going to be. They think, oh, I'll send it, and then the editor will send it back with a few revisions, and suggestions, and then I'll be ready to send it out to agents and editors. I'll be ready to, send it to a copy editor and get it ready to self-publish.
There's a few more
And
editing steps to that, but yep,
yeah,
I was like, oh, we just write it, right? And then it's done. No.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of authors are shocked by the amount of feedback. I mean, it's very unusual for me to send back a letter that isn't like 8, 9, 10 pages, single space. And then I also mark up the manuscript with track changes with a lot of just pointing out a lot of issues in the comments so they can see exactly what I'm talking about. And it can be overwhelming. And you're going to want feedback on your rewrite, and you might have to do multiple rewrites and get multiple rounds of feedback, because if you're getting like this huge letter with all these different things, because you've never written a book before, and they don't teach you in school how do you write a novel. They may
Absolutely.
tell you how to improve your um your writing
Your
skills.
grammar, but like, yeah, a story is a different animal.
Very different. I mean, everything from the point of view to the characterization to the plot points to the
Mhm.
pacing to the word choice, and writing actively versus passively, and the line
Mhm.
editing, the copy editing. There's just so much to it. And um, multi-published authors typically could use a couple rounds of editing. And if you get somebody who's got like 10 books published and they're with a traditional publisher, if they need a couple rounds of editing, that means like a beginner is going to need a lot more than that.
Oh yeah.
You might need 7 or 8 rounds, and who can afford that at several hundred per round. So that's where my course came in, was just to be that stepping stone to how can we cut down on those rounds of editing so that you can catch a lot of this on your own and learn to think like an editor. And then once you've got it, you've gone through all these steps and you've got it as strong as you can, then that's when it's time to hire an editor, and you'll be sending them a much higher level manuscript so they can give you a lot higher level feedback.
Absolutely. Like, so many great points, because I think, and again, like I fell into this pitfall. So I'm really new on my writing career. And in doing the first draft, I'm like, okay, I just get like a beta reader to read it and like just fine tune it. And it's like, no, you are gonna get an editor. You're going to do the grammar part, but then there's the structural part, and you're going to need to do a rewrite. And there's all these different things if you really want it to be as polished as you can make it. And, you learn about all these things through trial and error, like you mentioned. And, it could be expensive if you're doing that trial and error with, like an editor. So I so appreciate how you kind of thought about that and said, how can, I take what I learned and help someone that's new. And I love that. I love how you kind of were like really thoughtful in regards to that. And you have different courses to tailor to people. So you've told us a little bit about the blueprint. Can you tell us anything more about that and some of the other courses you have?
Yep. So the blueprint, I take you through, it's self-paced. So you do it at your own convenience.
Oh, nice.
And it's, I always say, don't like edit your book while you're taking it. Just go through it and get an overview of everything. And so there's quizzes and different exercises you can do just to practice your skills. And then when you get to the end of it, there's a 26-page self-editing checklist. So that's when you can do when you're editing, you can just refer to the checklist.
Nice.
Your manuscript. I have a time management blueprint for writers course that it kind of takes a holistic approach where it's, I've been through various stages of my life where I had to fit in writing, when I started really young. So, when I was a college student and then working full time and then having kids, it was just challenging trying to fit writing into my life. And I know that a lot of writers have that struggle also. So I created my time management blueprint course where we just talk about different ways. I mean, it goes into writing routines and things like that. And, how to make your writing sessions more productive and more creative and efficient. But we also talk about things like decluttering your house because it's
do not dismiss how important that is, listeners. Like that does like your environment, because your brain will find any reason to stall when it's time to write.
Right. Because I usually find that like if I have a lot of clutter everywhere, it means I'm kind of overwhelmed, and it's just sort of showing itself in my surroundings. And then it talks about like internal clutter, and which can be like mindset issues, and
love that.
Read this when it's done, so it just goes into all of that. And then I have my Energize Your Writing Toolkit, cheat sheets for character emotions, which is it's a mini course, but it's also 100-page printable PDF on it goes into like different aspects of nonverbal communication and body language. Like if you were writing a scene about an argument and there was anger, you look that up, and then it'll give you a whole list of prompts, emotional prompts to help convey that. Because a lot of authors tend to just reuse the same, she looked at him, he looked at her, they stared at each other, his eyebrows shot up, or that kind of thing. It gets very redundant, like he walked over to her, and so it just kind of breaks it up into different emotions that you're trying to convey, and gives you a lot of different ideas on different ways you can convey that through body language and nonverbal communication, like physiological sensations and
that's so exciting. Because I have gotten stuck in that rut, and like you're looking at it and like you have used the saying "she smiled" like 20 times, but it's just like oh my God, that makes me so excited. Absolutely.
Wow. And I initially created it version of it years ago for myself, because that was sort of one of my Achilles heels was like, okay, I'm good in the dialogue and the plot, but I got to fill in, like, how do I get across these emotions? So I started making kind of cheat sheets of myself. Of like, if I'm writing a romance scene, I'll write it and then be like, okay, I'm gonna go back and fill it in a little bit, and it just kind of would help me. I mean, to inspire me and to get my brain thinking in that direction. So it's sort of like part reference book where you can use the actual prompts, but it also has blank lines on it where you can write your own. Just kind of come up with your own so that you can keep expanding it and just refer to it whenever you need to. And then I'm expanding some of my courses. I have a $9 course mini course on writing blurbs, be coming out in the next couple of weeks, like writing your book.
Nice.
And just a lot more like workshop type things I'll have coming out.
Oh my, so you didn't just like these are like more than shortcuts. I mean, they're shortcuts, but like this is like the whole process. Like this can really cut down on even just think about the blurb. Like I think about like the time spent in thinking about, well, what do I put here and all this to be able to have, and I like how your courses are like guided. You talked about like, you can self-pace and all these different things. So that way, when you're in the trenches, you don't feel alone. So I love that. And you talked about this holistic approach to time management, which makes me so excited because, listeners, I'm sure we all have seen the get up at 5:00 in the morning, get up an hour early and write early in the morning, but that's not always feasible. And I'm a really big person of like finding what works for you in your style. So I love it. Really sounds like you've kind of thought about that. Like you've thought about like the person versus saying like, this is the only one way, but you've really just kind of brought all these different tools together. So that really is exciting.
Yeah. Cause I tried with the time, I tried different things. I tried like getting up early or, staying up to midnight, and I was getting run down.
Right.
And I just, there might be, if you're on a deadline, maybe you do have to do that sometimes, but to just do that for the long haul, I mean, I couldn't sustain that.
Right.
And so I say in the time management class, I mean, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of ideas, a whole bunch of things, and you just got to try them and see which ones will work for you, because there isn't like I can tell you, you do need to focus on these. You need to focus like on your external clutter, your internal clutter and mindset, your planning and getting things done, even your electronic clutter, like, how you keep manage your emails, manage your folders, like that you keep your stories and research. And, I can tell you that you do need to focus on each of these areas, but like, I'm not going to say this is the one tool you need to manage, to the one calendar you need to use, the one planner,
Absolutely.
one like project organizer. I'm going to tell you what I've used and give you some other ones to check out, and then or different times of day to write. Even if you just write for 10 minutes a day here and there, or I found even though my chiropractor says it's not the best thing, I found that bringing a Chromebook, like to karate class for birthday parties when my kids were there, or riding my car. I mean,
but like that's like so real, right? Like finding those moments and I love that. And again, it's just, I think sometimes people get afraid of like the writing process or editing because you feel like it's like, oh, I have to do this one thing. And it's like, well, what happens if that doesn't fit? And in providing all these different tools, you really create space for people to see themselves. And so like that makes me like really excited, because I just remember, again, like early on being really discouraged because I'd be in like rooms or in workshops and it'd be like, this is the one way. And it was like, yeah, but that doesn't work for me. And you could feel really isolated. So that just really makes me excited and happy that you do that for folks. Like you highlight all these different things so people don't feel isolated and they feel like they can see themselves on their writing journey.
Right. Yeah. Because I think that part of it is very individualized, like how you're going to fit writing in. I mean, like the editing and the blueprint, I can tell you these are all the things you need to look at to think like an editor and to get manuscript more closer to publication. But as far as how you fit it all into your life and your mindset and your time management, there are different things you need to pay attention to, but how you actually, it's not going to work unless you find the strategies that work for you.
Correct. I love that. I love that. And so, as you mentioned, you're a writer yourself. Can you tell us about some of your writing projects and, how did that get started?
I've been writing since I was in third grade. I was very introverted and I loved to read, and writing just sort of became a way for me to express myself. My teachers would always make a big deal out of my stories and everything. I think they were shocked that this quiet girl never said a word was like writing these murder mysteries. They would say, "Oh, like can you write like a 2-page story?" And I'd turn in like a 15-page murder mystery.
Oh my God, that's exciting.
So I had my first book published when I was 18 with Avon Books. I entered it in a contest for teenage writers, and it won a publishing contract. And that was my young adult ice hockey novel, Face Off. So I learned a lot from just going through the editing process. And the book was really successful, but there were several years of rejection between that and the next book. And then I published a couple of mystery novels 25 years ago today, in Sink or Swim, kind of mystery, romantic suspense, young adult paranormal thriller, Dark Before Dawn. I brought back Face Off and took a sequel out of my drawer and totally rewrote it. It was like an unpublished sequel, totally rewrote it 25 years later. And so we released Face Off and Offsides, and those still sell copies every day. So that's really exciting.
Yay.
To take this book I wrote as a teenager and then write a sequel to it years later and have it still be connecting with readers, which is really great. And then I'm focusing now on mostly on my Storybook Valley romantic comedy series. I have Fooling Around with Cinderella and Prancing Around with Sleeping Beauty, and they're just light, sweet, and sassy books set at a fairy tale theme park.
Yeah.
The Catskills of New York. I love theme parks, and I just wanted to write something happy and and fun.
They sound like it. They sound really exciting and interesting. And so, where can people find your books and your courses?
So my author website for my books is stacyjuba.com, and I have like a mailing list where you can get like a free sample chapter of my mysteries and my or sample scenes from my mysteries and my Storybook Valley books. And then for writers, I have shortcutsforwriters.com. So I have some free resources for writers, including a free 5-day line editing class, a looks and gazes guide that has 100 ways to jazz up your characters' looks and gazes, going back to the nonverbal communication. And then I have a couple of on-demand master classes, like one that takes you through the self-editing process, and one on some time management hacks. So they're welcome to find me there. And then I also have a Facebook group for writers, the Shortcuts for Writers Editing Made Simple Facebook group.
That's again, like, so clever. You've made like everything accessible, from the Facebook group to online classes to books. And, it's amazing all the things that you have done over your career. So my question for you, right, a little bit of a selfish question, what can you say to like new writers or just folks that are struggling in this process? They feel like, I can't get through the editing process. I can't even get my first book out. Like, do you have any words of encouragement for us?
So as far as like the writing goes, I mean, one thing is just to make sure you know exactly what story you're telling. Like in my new blurb class, I actually tell people to write the blurb. If you're still writing your story, if you're trying to think of an idea or you're early in the stages, most writers don't even think about writing a blurb till like, oh, that's later.
Right.
I'd say like write it now, because a lot of times that will just help, just boiling it down into those couple of paragraphs really makes you focus on what the story was about. Because I tend to read a lot of manuscripts, and I try to have authors send me the blurb also. And I find that sometimes they don't really go together. Like the
Mm-hmm.
blurb is either vague because, and then the story, that means like that the author doesn't really have like defined plot points. It's more episodic. It's not really going anywhere. Um, or the blurb is like bogged down in like subplots. It's just talking about all these subplots, and in that case, a lot of times the book is sort of, gets kind of convoluted. It doesn't have like that central
Right.
storyline, um, or character arcs. It's just a lot of things happening, but it's not. It it's hard for them to put it in a blurb. Like, what is this about? So that's sort of like my first piece of advice, is just make sure you know what your story is about. Just write the blurb early and really think about, what is the main, if you take away all the a lot of the
Right.
subplots and the, just what is this story about? What is this character's journey? Who are the most important characters? What are the big turning points? What obstacle, you don't want to say in the blurb like what the obstacle is, but you want to leave readers wanting more, like that there's something going to
Right.
happen. So so that just sort of gets you thinking about, okay, where is this going? How are things going to get worse?
Well,
Yeah.
listen, I'm taking notes.
Yeah, so that's just one thing, is just really focus on that. And then it's for like the time, you know, it's better to write like 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, than just save it all up. Like, okay, next Friday, I know I'm going to have like 4 hours. I'm just going to write all day. Well, that's great if you get some days like that, but don't not write until then, because it's going to be, if you haven't written in a while and worked on your book in a while, it's going to be hard to kind of get into that writing zone. You have to
Yeah.
refresh your memory about where you are, and okay, what's the scene about again, and what did I want to put in it. So you can get a lot done, like just like 10 minutes here and there. Like when I had a full-time job, I would kind of eat for like 15 minutes and then I write for 15 minutes, and I got a lot done, just 15 minutes a day on my lunch break. And then, come home, if you can find another 15 minutes, those pages really add up. By the end of the month, those 15 minutes, like here and there, really add up. So just try to find ways to have a regular writing routine as much as possible. And it doesn't have to be a long session. Just, you know,
I love that. I love that because I think sometimes we discredit those 10 minutes and we might turn to like scrolling on social media or just kind of like just sitting around. But like, picking up your manuscript, jotting down some sentences, some notes, just keep it present, right? Because yeah, I've been kind of prey to that, putting it down, and then it takes a minute to get back in that groove. And so, yeah, absolutely. Again, I love that, just the through line of how holistic you are with the approach, and no, I feel less afraid about approaching the manuscript and editing, and just kind of just, again, thinking about that. If someone's listening and they've done their first draft, they've kind of cleaned it up, where should they start? If they're like, okay, I want to connect with Stacy, I want to tighten up some things, if someone has, again, like they've like, okay, it needs to have some editing, where would you direct them to start?
well, if they're a new writer, I'd probably say the most affordable option would be to like take the book editing blueprint class. But if you really have your heart set that you want to work with an editor and just kind of get some personal feedback on whether you're on the right track, then a lot of times I'll say, like, why don't we do like a few chapters, or a couple chapters, just so I can kind of get a sense of your overall writing style. And that can be really helpful, because if you've got a pattern or something
Mm-hmm.
on, in the first chapter of your book, like, there's so many things you can see as an editor, like talking heads dialogue, or point of view, not getting into your characters, your viewpoint character's head, as deeply as they should, or just not having the scene really told through anyone's eyes consistently. Lack of description, or like passive writing versus active writing. Like this telling versus showing.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that an editor can pick up on right away, like overused words, like we were talking about. So that can be helpful um, just to be able to point out, okay, this is something that's going to follow you through the whole book. You really need to focus on getting in your character's head more, and here's some strategies for how to do it. Or look how many times you've used eyes. If we've only had like 20 pages, and you've used eyes like 50 times already. So that's a pattern you have to watch. So it can be helpful just budget wise just to start with a couple of chapters. I mean, you can tell the editor where's the story's going. I mean, it's hard to like comment on the whole story as a whole, like
Right, right.
without seeing it, but they can give you some insight into just like your technique. And because that's like a big issue if, for example, like your whole story, and I see this a lot, you have the whole draft written, but it's not really told with like if it's in third person, for example, it's not really deep third person. Like there'll be scenes where it's just full of dialogue, but we're not going back into that protagonist's head. It's not
Right.
really told through their eyes, or like if you're describing something, it's not really through that character's eyes. It's just sort of like, the walls were this color, and it just doesn't have that voice throughout, and that's something that's going to affect every
Absolutely.
page of the book. So if you can pick up on those issues early before you've paid an editor like hundreds and hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars to read the whole thing, that can be helpful. But I do advise people to, if they're newer to writing, or if they're sort of intermediate writers and they're still getting long letters back from their freelance editor, getting those long and having to do a lot of rewrites, and they want to up level their, I suggest that the course is sort of the most affordable way, because that'll give them, the broad overview, and then, or just starting with like the smaller chapter if you really feel like you need that personal feedback. Just start with like a sample to see what the editor says.
I love that. So, okay. So either start with one of the courses or connect about, getting a couple of chapters, especially if you're concerned about, the cost of all of it. Okay. And all right, this may be a hard question, but I'll ask it. How do you know that you're done with the editing process? Like when is it time to walk away from the editing process?
Well, I always give myself time, and I recommend my clients also give yourself some space from it. Just when you think you're done, put it aside for a while, and then go back to it and read it one more time. Go down your checklist, make sure you've covered everything. Once you've covered everything, and you've done all your proofreading and everything, I like to have my husband read it. I have my parents read it. Now I have a daughter that loves to read, so I probably have her
Oh, nice.
her read it. She's a teenager now, just to get final feedback and little thoughts. And then like that's at that point, that's when you could send it to an editor, or if you've already worked with the editor and you've kind of gone back and forth, and you don't want to pay for any more rounds, but you think you've covered everything, again, give it some distance, have some beta readers look it over. And then there is a point where you're going to have to let it go. Some writers will need to hire a copy editor, a proofreader, depending on their skills. I always like tell my clients, like, if they have a strong grasp of grammar, and they have strong grammar skills and proofreading skills, you know, and they don't need a lot of rewrites on the actual manuscript, then between the two of us, they probably don't need to hire a proofreader or copy editor, as long as they really look over that final draft, closely, because I'll run some grammar scans and things like that. But I also see a lot of manuscripts where there's like grammar and punctuation issues on every every page, multiple
Yep.
ones. And as a developmental editor, I don't pay a lot of attention to the grammar. I mean, I'll run it through some grammar scans, try to clean up a bit, but that doesn't catch everything. And even so, if I'm sending them like a 8-page letter saying these are all the things you need to change, it doesn't make sense to clean up all the grammar because they're going to have to rewrite anyway. And so at that point, an author like that doesn't have a strong grasp of grammar and punctuation, where that sort of comes harder for them, than once they finish the developmental editing and line editing process, and they feel good about that, then they're still going to need to hire someone to make sure there's no mistakes so that it looks professional.
It is a process, but biting it off bit by bit, right? Not taking everything all at once. Stacy, again, like seeing like your passion for editing and writing, I feel like I can pick up my manuscript and edit a couple of chapters today. I might need to check out your resources to make sure I'm on the right track, but I definitely feel a lot better about it. So thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge. Is there any last things that you want to leave us with before I ask my last question?
Don't give up. I've on my About the Author page, I have like, I think I have like a picture of like a roller coaster, so I know what it feels like, all the ups and downs. You get so excited when you're writing the book, and then you get feedback, or then you get a rejection,
yes.
or you find out a beta reader and they're like, they don't get it. So, I've been there. I know how there were times I was close to quitting. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I so determined to just sit in this room and just be alone and make up stuff and expect people to buy it? But it's like a passion. It's just something that you feel compelled to do, and it's for once you connect with readers that's your target audience. It's really worth it just to get to leave your mark and get your to entertain people or educate people, whatever your goal is, to just, and to have that dream come true, to be a published author and have people reading your work. It really is worth it. So just keep going. And, even if you feel discouraged, we've all felt discouraged. We've all had those ups and downs. It's not just you. so just, nothing wrong with you. It's a tough goal, but it's it's a really exciting path to follow.
Yes. Thank you again for all of that encouragement and all that knowledge. Listeners, if you want to connect with Stacy, please check out the episode show notes, where it will have all the information to courses, books, resources, all the different ways that you can connect with her. So please follow with that. And Stacy, my last question is, I like to leave the audience and myself with a prompt, something that, will inspire us to be creative, whether that is in cooking, writing, artistry, whatever that is, just problem solving. And so if I had to ask you to leave us with a word or a phrase, something that we can use as a prompt, what would you leave us with?
Well, one journal prompt that I've used over the years, because I used to journal a lot, and just I remember, and then it's just kind of cool the things that you write, like, because I like to journal a lot for like description, just to, like, if I go somewhere unique, like if I went to a really unique restaurant, or I was traveling, and I'd like to write those details down in case I'm
going to take that tip.
Yeah, in case like I'm ever writing a book and I want to put something like that, setting in the book, then I can go back to my journal. So it's kind of neat, like how if you write, I remember, like one time I wrote about like a Mexican restaurant I went to at college with my friends, and it was really all decorated, and it's like I was surprised at all the details I remembered, and I was like, oh, this is really neat. I can use this somewhere. And just see what comes out. It could be something you observed years ago, or you don't know what's near in the recesses of your subconscious that might prove useful later. So it's just like set a timer and I remember and see what happens.
All right. I'm excited about that. So listen, listeners, if you are interested to see how I use the prompt, I remember, stay tuned to the end of this episode to see what I do with Stacy's prompt. And definitely you take that and you run with that and see where it goes. You might have your next greatest story. Stacy, thank you so very much for stopping by. Please do not be a stranger and have a great and wonderful rest of your day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I remember the way the misty rain pooled on my skin, the way the chill made my hair stand and my toes go numb, the throbbing of my frostbitten nose and snow crystals hanging from my lashes. My chattering teeth shook and the smell of chicken broth tingled my nose. The snow-covered ground was muddy with footprints, and my vision filled with the blur of people passing like faded pastel paintings. The crunch of warming foil wrapped around me tickled my ears, and the wailing sobs of my mother hurt my soul. That, I remember, was the last time I went skating on a frozen lake.